When night falls, many men feel as if an invisible weight follows them, a silent judgment that seems to measure every gesture, every sigh, and every second of intimacy. The question that arises in those moments, intense and persistent, is always the same: am I lasting long enough? It does not arise from a single mistake or from an isolated critique. It is the accumulation of years of expectations, comparisons, and cultural messages that have taught that their worth depends on performance. That doubt can infiltrate the mind, stealing sleep and planting insecurity even in the closest, most loving moments. This nighttime anxiety does not always show itself in words. Sometimes it appears as insomnia, repetitive thoughts, or that feeling of discomfort that settles in right after intimacy. It is an internal dialogue that many have carried for decades without telling even the person with whom they share their bed. Silence becomes a constant companion, feeding doubts that grow in the dark. And although every man experiences it differently, the emotional core is the same: the fear of not measuring up, the worry of disappointing, and the inability to express these concerns openly without feeling that their own masculinity is at risk. Within that silence hides a deep desire to understand, to improve, and to feel sufficient, but also a huge lack of information that leaves men fighting this emotional battle completely alone. From a very young age, many men grow up surrounded by messages that, without realizing it, shape their perception of what it means to be competent in intimacy. In casual conversations with friends, in jokes during family gatherings, in movies where the characters seem to have endless stamina, and even in the way sex is discussed in the media, a narrative is built that presents duration as synonymous with virility. Every seemingly innocent comment accumulates and creates an impossible standard, an ideal that has nothing to do with the reality of bodies or the true emotional experience of sharing intimacy with someone. These expectations not only pressure but also distort, because they place the man in a constant performance role, as if he were obliged to prove something every time he is with his partner. This emotional burden creates insecurity even in those who have never had a physical problem, because the fear of failing becomes stronger than the genuine desire to connect. Over time, these ingrained beliefs cause many men to approach intimacy not from enjoyment or curiosity, but from anticipation of failure, as if every encounter were an exam they must pass. This rigid and demanding cultural view becomes a shadow that follows the man for years, affecting his confidence and keeping him away from a much more human, sensitive, and authentic experience of being with another person. Before continuing, I would love to know something to connect with our community. Which city or country are you watching from? Write it in the comments. I enjoy knowing the people who truly care about their well-being, and this helps me create content that is more useful and relevant for you and your region. Let's get straight to the point. For generations, the idea has been reinforced that there is a sort of ideal time that separates skilled men from those who are not, as if intimacy could be measured with the precision of a clock. This belief has been passed from person to person and seems to have become an unspoken rule that many accept without questioning. The myth of the perfect timing creates the impression that good sex is strictly defined by the duration of penetration, leaving out everything that truly builds a fulfilling experience, from emotional connection to foreplay. The pressure to reach that supposed standard makes many men enter intimacy more focused on controlling an imaginary stopwatch than on connecting with their partner. This myth also ignores the enormous diversity of human experiences and the different rhythms that each body has, making a single ideal not only unfair but absurd. In practice, this obsession with minutes creates an expectation that is impossible to sustain and transforms something that should be spontaneous and pleasurable into a task full of tension. When a man believes he must reach a specific time to be considered competent, his attention shifts from enjoyment to constant self-evaluation, which erodes the naturalness of the encounter. The truth is that there is no perfect time that works for all couples. Duration is not an absolute parameter nor a goal that must be achieved. It is just one aspect within a much richer and more complex experience. Understanding this is the first step to freeing intimacy from rules that should never have existed. In everyday life, Men receive constant messages that shape their beliefs without realizing it, and these messages come from conversations with friends, seemingly innocent comments, and above all from the media they consume. Movies often show very long sexual encounters where pleasure seems to have no time limits, and series reinforce the same idea, creating characters who always perform without tiring and without showing doubt, generating an internal comparison no man can win. Among friends, jokes and exaggerated stories become a social code in which no one wants to admit insecurities and where fictional feats end up seeming normal. This combination of media fiction and social competition installs a silent pressure that leads many men to believe that what they experience in intimacy is insufficient. Gradually, a distorted image forms in which duration is interpreted as synonymous with personal value and where any difference from what is seen or heard becomes a source of shame. It is a manufactured reality that distances men from their own sensations and pushes them to chase unrealistic standards that do not represent the authentic human experience at all. Ethan was 58 years old when he finally gathered the courage to admit something he had kept silent for decades. During his youth, he always believed he had to show strength in everything he did, and intimacy was no exception. Over time, he began to notice that his anxiety increased whenever he approached an intimate moment, especially at night when the silence of the house forced him to listen to his own thoughts. He remembered comments from former colleagues boasting of endless sexual feats, and although he sensed they were exaggerations, a part of him took them as absolute truths. Years earlier, he had tried to discuss it with a professional, but stopped at the door because he felt a shame he could not explain. In this way, he accumulated an internal weight that accompanied him in every romantic relationship and made him feel inadequate even when his partner told him that she loved him as he was. Ethan lived trapped between what he felt and what he believed was expected of him, a distance that grew larger as time went by. Ethan's life changed when one day he read an article that clearly explained how long sexual encounters actually last for most couples. It did not talk about invented averages or idealized stories, but rather serious studies conducted with thousands of men and women showing that the usual duration was much shorter than he had imagined his entire life. That information hit him first with surprise and then with a huge sense of relief, because for the first time he understood that his experience was neither an exception nor a personal flaw. He remembered a conversation with a health professional who had mentioned the importance of knowing the body and physiology, but Ethan had never allowed himself to listen carefully. He decided to consult again and discovered that his performance was within a completely normal range, which opened a door he had never considered possible. From that moment on, he stopped measuring his value in minutes and began to focus on how he felt and how his partner felt, which transformed his relationship with sexuality and with himself into something more human, more real, and much lighter. Many women describe satisfaction in intimacy as an experience that goes far beyond the duration of the sexual act, and Ethan discovered this when he began communicating more openly with his partner. She explained that what really made her feel fulfilled was the sense of emotional closeness, the comfort of feeling desired, and the ability to share a moment without rush or unrealistic expectations. In conversations with other couples, Ethan discovered that this perception was much more common than he imagined, because many women said they preferred shorter encounters filled with attention and sensitivity. Emotional connection creates an environment where both can relax and stop thinking about technical performance, which paradoxically improves the experience naturally. When Ethan stopped obsessing over the clock and allowed himself to enjoy the moment, he noticed his breathing became calmer and his partner responded in a more authentic and close way, which completely transformed their encounters into something deeper and more sincere. Understanding female physiology helped Ethan grasp an aspect that had previously caused confusion and anxiety because he thought everything had to happen quickly and almost automatically. He discovered that many women need more time to become aroused, not due to a lack of desire, but because their bodies follow a different rhythm that requires calm, gradual stimulation, and prior emotional connection. His partner explained that for her it was essential to feel considered before the intimate moment. through small everyday gestures, gentle words, and expressions of affection that prepared her mind and body. When Ethan began integrating this information, he noticed that the atmosphere changed completely because it was no longer about rushing the steps, but about allowing everything to flow naturally. Understanding that female desire is a process fueled by connection, sensory stimuli, and emotional safety allowed him to relax and discover that pleasure begins even before physical contact, which significantly reduced his internal pressure and increased harmony with his partner. Science has spent decades trying to understand patterns of sexual duration and has managed to measure precisely what was previously only a matter of speculation. Studies on intravaginal ejaculatory latency time show that the majority of sexual encounters in healthy couples last between 5 and 7 minutes, a fact that surprises many men accustomed to comparing their performance with exaggerated stories or media portrayals. These studies also show that when duration is extremely short, for example 1 or 2 minutes, women are more likely to feel unsatisfied because the body does not have enough time to respond and reach optimal levels of arousal. However, beyond this range, prolonging the activity does not necessarily increase satisfaction, which demonstrates that time is only one element and that the quality of the interaction carries much more weight in the perception of pleasure and connection. To illustrate what science reveals, we can imagine couples like Ethan and Laura, who discovered that focusing on mutual attention and sensory details created a much fuller experience than trying to extend the encounter indefinitely. Studies indicate that an approximate range of 7 to 15 minutes of penetration, accompanied by foreplay and emotional presence, offers the ideal balance for both partners to fully enjoy the experience. Within this interval, it is possible to vary the pace, alternate positions, and explore sensitive areas without fatigue or tension diminishing satisfaction. These figures are not strict rules, but guidelines, helping to demystify the obsession with duration and focus on what truly generates pleasure, connection, variety, and conscious attention to the other person. Learning to interpret these signals allows men to relax and enjoy, transforming intimacy into a shared and enriching experience. Many men face a silent enemy during intimacy, the pressure to perform. That inner voice that constantly questions whether they are lasting long enough creates a vicious cycle that is difficult to break. When the mind fills with doubt, the body responds with tension and anxiety, causing muscles to tighten and climax to arrive sooner than desired. Paradoxically, the more a man worries about lasting longer, the faster he reaches the end. This pattern repeats over and over and can turn every sexual encounter into a source of stress rather than enjoyment. Anxiety not only affects the man, but also alters his partner's experience as she perceives the tension and lack of emotional presence. Recognizing this cycle is essential because only by identifying the pressure one imposes on oneself can it begin to be broken, opening space for relaxation and true shared pleasure. When a man is focused on controlling time or meeting external expectations, his partner feels it immediately. Emotional disconnection shows itself in automatic gestures, mechanical movements, and scattered attention that reduce the sense of closeness. Women seek not only physical pleasure, but also to feel recognized, valued, and desired. If they sense that their partner is distracted or anxious, the experience loses depth, and intimacy becomes an obligation rather than a shared act of pleasure and connection. This explains why even longer encounters can be unsatisfying if attention and affection are absent. Understanding how emotional disconnection is perceived allows men to reassess their approach, focus on full presence, and create a space where both partners can feel fully connected and enjoy intimacy authentically. Ethan experienced a profound change when he decided to stop focusing on how many minutes he lasted and began to focus on how he was making his partner feel. This transformation did not happen immediately, but was the result of observing and listening carefully, allowing each gesture and caress to be guided by connection rather than haste. As his mind freed itself from the imaginary stopwatch, he noticed that his body responded more calmly, that he could maintain an erection longer, and that climax arrived naturally, without anxiety or tension. This change allowed him to fully enjoy the moment and the company of Laura, perceiving her reactions, her size, and her pleasure as more authentic indicators of success than any number. Learning to prioritize the shared experience over technical duration opened a space where intimacy became deeper, more enriching, and more satisfying for both of them. Relaxation plays a crucial role in male sexuality because it directly affects the body's chemistry and physical response. When Ethan began practicing full presence, his nervous system released tension, adrenaline decreased, and he was able to better control his arousal. This natural state of calm allows climax to be delayed without conscious effort and makes every movement more aware and pleasurable. By stopping the struggle against time, a man regains true control, not through force or restraint, but through calmness and complete attention to the encounter. Relaxation also improves nonverbal communication because gestures and caresses flow more smoothly and sincerely. In this way, duration is no longer an imposed goal, but a natural consequence of being connected and present, producing longer, more satisfying, and emotionally enriching encounters. Learning to manage the rhythm of intimacy is fundamental to creating a more satisfying and lasting experience. Ethan understood that every movement did not need to be continuous or uniform, but could vary in intensity, pause, and resume, as if each encounter were a dance in which every step has its moment. By introducing strategic pauses, he not only delayed climax, but also increased anticipation and his partner's desire, making the experience more intense and pleasurable. Thinking of intimacy as a dance allows both participants to connect with their emotions and sensations, respecting the natural timing of the body and arousal. This perception transformed the way Ethan approached each encounter, turning moments of physical closeness into a dynamic, harmonious, and playful exchange. Breathing is a powerful tool that Ethan learned to use to control his arousal and stay present during intimacy. Breathing slowly and deeply, inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth, helps reduce anxiety, calm the nervous system, and maintain focus on the present moment. This practice not only naturally delays climax, but also intensifies sensitivity and connection with the partner. Additionally, conscious control of the body allows one to notice signals of arousal and tension that previously went unnoticed, giving the ability to adjust rhythm and caresses according to both partners' needs. Ethan discovered that integrating breathing and body awareness transformed intimacy into a more controlled, relaxed, and deeply satisfying process for both him and his partner. One of the most overlooked elements of intimacy is the importance of the moments surrounding sexual activity. Foreplay is not simply an optional prelude, but the foundation upon which arousal and emotional connection are built. Kisses, caresses, massages, and mindful exploration of the partner's body prepare both the mind and body for pleasure. Likewise, the moments after climax, including hugs, whispers, and gestures of affection, reinforce the sense of care, appreciation, and closeness. Ethan learned that dedicating attention to these stages before and after sex turned each encounter into a complete and memorable experience, in which both he and Laura felt desired, connected, and emotionally fulfilled. Understanding that intimacy is a process that extends beyond intercourse radically changed his perception of what it means to have satisfying and enriching sex. The final and deepest lesson we can take from Ethan's experience and from science is that true satisfaction is not measured in minutes or physical endurance, but in presence, attention, and emotional connection. Being fully aware and focused on the partner transforms the experience, making it intense, enriching, and pleasurable. When a man stops obsessing over time and begins to prioritize the shared experience, he discovers that not only does duration naturally increase, but the emotional bond is strengthened and his self-confidence renewed. Women value presence, tenderness, variety, and emotional commitment far more than the simple duration of the sexual act. That is why obsessing over a stopwatch is irrelevant. What truly matters is being there fully, creating moments that both partners will remember as special, intense, and deeply satisfying.